All right, hello, it's Wmpyr. Here to talk about, I guess this is what Professor Remy Presas called the art within the art. So when you are looking at one style and it helps you understand another style, or it helps you improve in another style, it's because there's a connection there between the art. So it's the art within the art. And okay, so in this instance, let me talk about the heaven six, right? So when we're talking about the heaven six, it's 1, 2, 3. That's halfway, right? 1, 2, and 3. When you compare that to karate movement, it's actually very, very similar. So in karate, they have a movement like this, and then they go here. Okay, so this is what they call like a jodan uke, which is a upwards block, so-called. And then we could also look at the reverse heaven six. And with the reverse heaven six, so if I'm in a parallel stance instead of over and under, if I'm like this, 1, 2. So 1, 2, 3 is the halfway point for the reverse heaven six. But if we look at it from a karate type of point of view, it becomes 1, 2. You know, you can see that that's what they call a gedan uke, which is a lower block, right, so-called. So you can see the similarities there. And if we start to think about it further, deeper, you can see that instead of, if the attack is coming from my left side, right, it would be, you would think that you're going to block with the left hand because it's closer, it's right there. But no, they are actually defending with this, the far hand. Okay, so 1, 2, right? So yes, this is the big deal, right? But you see, this comes first. So 1, 2, like so, right? So when you look at it that way, it's the far hand that initiates. So that becomes very important, because without this, then this is not going to happen. So this is it, right? And so when you look at it that way, why are they not blocking with the closer hand? How come it's the far hand, right? And that's a very interesting idea right there. And one of the teachers, instructors that I met from Japan, he said it's because the far hand is stronger. And that makes sense, right? The side that's to the back, the further one, that's your power side. So that makes sense, right? That's one that's going to hit harder because it's in the back. Makes total sense. But I think there's also something, and I agree with him, but there's also something we need to consider, which is distance, okay? And when you consider distance, when you're further away and the person attacks from my left side, so they're attacking over here, like in this direction, then if I could defend with the closer arm, it makes sense. You know, boom, boom. Just boom, right here. That's better. It's faster, because it's closer. It's right there. I don't have to do anything. It's right here. Boom. Just defend it like that. So that's the best, and that's what I would call the force-to-force block. So it's my lead hand, so it's more like fencing, no coincidence, and yeah, it is what I call the force-to-force block, which to me comes from, well, it's not to me, it actually comes from espada y daga, it comes from the old-timey fencing. And okay, so then why are they blocking here with the heaven six? This hand comes first. Well, if you think about it, if you're blocking over here, right? But if they're faster than I thought, if they're able to slip through, and I try to block here a little late, then my arm gets crushed because I only have here and it's already here. So you see, I don't have room. So this arm is weak in that sense. So if I'm late here, if I'm early, that's fine. This is great. You know, I can block here all day long. But if I'm late, or they were faster than I thought, they were, they came in explosively or whatever, and they caught me here, then this is, once again, this is weak. So then it makes more sense to use this hand, right? So that means they came in closer than I expected. So it's a closer distance. So in a further distance, this is way better, like this, like fencing, right? But in a closer situation, then this would be better. So that makes total sense to me. And to further confirm that, I've actually done this in full contact sparring, where I was going empty-handed. The other person was throwing punches, and I used this, which in Filipino martial arts, we use the elbow here. So instead of the upward block, it's an elbow, but it's the same idea. This hand comes first, and I time it to my elbow. So this hand is the first hand. So instead of going 1, 2 like this, it's 1 and then the elbow. Okay, so 1, 2, or 1, 2. And I know in Filipino martial arts, the gunting technique can be done in all 4 directions. So left to right, right to left, up, down, down to up. So here I just use the same logic and boom. So this is an upwards block. Lots of people do that in what they call Filipino dirty boxing. Lots of people do that. But I'm coming from a Kali, Escrima, Arnis perspective and applying the dirty boxing concept there and used it in full contact. And guess what? At the time, my boxing was not very good at all. It's still not good, but it was horrible back then. Way horrible. It's still not good. But so at that time, to parry an attack and to counterpunch that seemed unthinkable. To parry it here, last second, right here, with the backhand, I was like, I can't do that. I could barely see the guy's punch. He's super fast. How am I supposed to catch it here and then counterpunch again? It wasn't, so the boxing idea for me was like, Bruce Lee said something about Western martial arts, like boxing, is way too brave, like you're taking way too many risks. Eastern martial arts tend to be way too safe. So he was like, you do in between, and once again, the Japanese instructors said about Bruce Lee he could do that because he's a genius. He could mix the two. Normal people, you're going to get confused. So you kind of have to do one extreme or another. So anyway, that made sense to me. I felt like, wow, what Bruce Lee said, the Western arts is you're taking way too much risk there. I can't do that. So I actually pulled it off when sparring a heavyweight boxer, I countered the guy and I was like, wow, I did it. I actually pulled it off. Guess what? He countered that with an uppercut, and I remember flying across the room, and I saw stars. And the stars was, imagine Street Fighter, the video game, when you take too much damage, the stars come out. It was more like this. The stars just boom, 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 like that, And I was like, wow, I almost got knocked out there. Knocked the F out. But anyway, this movement, on the other hand, I was able to use it even at that time. So not only this one too, to time their punch and bam, elbow the punch either way. So that comes from Destructions, which comes from Defang the Snake. So that made sense to me. I was able to use it. And what I'm trying to say to you guys is that with a lower skill, you could use that. You don't have to be, with boxing later, I had to develop a lot more skill to be able to try some of the stuff that you see all the time. Like pros use like nothing. Just wait. You get in the ring and try it yourself. And you're going to see it's a lot harder than it looks, It also depends on the opponent. But whereas to blasting, like catching and blasting their punch was a lot easier for me because I guess it's like human nature. If you're seeing a mosquito fly, boom, this, instead of just trying to catch it with one hand, it just works better. Okay, it's easier for you to do. So I kind of went off on a tangent there. I apologize, but the whole idea here, was that this cross hand coming from behind has more power than here, and this tends to work better once they came in much closer. So the force-to-force block that I said is definitely for long range, and that is more, that takes you back to the fencing era, ancient fencing. And there, I believe it's the best choice if you can. You don't always get that choice though, but if you can, go with that. That's the safest because it's long range. You're further away from the opponent. That is the safest, but you can't always get that for 100 different reasons. So sometimes you're in much closer to the opponent, and when that happens, then to go from the backhand rather than the forehand, because the forehand's going to get crushed, go with the backhand. So then that takes to the next logical way of thinking, which is Filipino martial arts, where they're doing the Heaven Six, this kind of movement, and then same with I said there was a link to karate, and then karate comes, we know, comes from the Chinese martial arts. So all three of those have that similarity where they're defending with the backhand. Okay, so that means they are expecting a much closer confrontation, not a further away confrontation. And that's where they feel like is the true combat, because it makes sense, because that's when you're really caught off guard. That's when you're really in trouble. When you have the distance, yeah, it's still dangerous, and it's great to have the fencing skills where you could just pick apart the opponent. It's safer and all that. But once again, you may not have that choice. So I teach both. I teach long range and close range for self-defense. But, between the two, which one is, in a way, I don't want to say realistic. Think about it, okay? The closer you get to the opponent, this is a worse situation. So this is where you really need your self-defense skills. However, it gets incredibly harder. That is the truth. So even though this might be the real skill for real self-defense is when you're up close, it's also a lot harder to do. So in that sense, you may not be able to pull it off. That's just a reality, depending on the opponent, depending on the circumstance. So, and it's riskier for you. You might just have made a simple mistake. No one's perfect. So if that's the case, and in real life you can't afford mistakes, then this is not the best place to be, obviously, right? So in a way, close range is the more realistic self-defense. But then if you go from the point of view of which one can I actually pull off in a real life situation, it's long range, without a doubt. Long range, you have a much better chance of really doing these techniques and really pulling it off. You have a better chance. So does that make long range more realistic? In a way, yes, it does. But I'm not here to argue that, because it's an endless argument. And once again, I believe the solution is I teach both. I teach both. Okay. And historically, you look at humankind, we did both, and everything in between. So long range and close range, yeah, it's a very interesting dynamic there, something to think about. So that's it for now. Thank you for viewing, and take care, folks.